IVM.
Hi everybody, just wanted to ask everyone for a quick favor. We're running a brand survey right now and would really appreciate it if you could let us know what you think about the advertising on IVM. Go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and do let us know. As part of this, we'll be selecting 10 random participants and sending them some IVM swag, so do fill out those surveys.
For me, more than anybody else, it was my childhood dream. I was something when I was 6 years old, I dreamt of this, every single time. And when you're actually at that venue, and it's amazing and every athlete feels that. When you see that Indian flag out there, it's flying because of you. And that is a very special feeling. When you wear that blazer, you can't buy that blazer. You can't buy the Olympic blazer. You earn it. It's not given to you, So you feel that little bit of pride and you feel that you have to do justice to it.
Hello and welcome to the Filter Coffee Podcast. My guest today is Imtiaz Anees, India's most successful equestrian Olympian, one of only 3 people to have ever represented the country in this sport. And this includes young Fawad Mirza, who will be representing India this week at the Tokyo Olympics. Imtiaz is also the only Indian who has finished the 3-day race, which includes a grueling day 2, which is a cross-country race on horseback, one that is considered one of the most dangerous sports in the world. Imtiaz has just released his memoir, Riding Free, published by HarperCollins, and it is a breezy read not just into his life and journey, but also into the sport of equestrian, and how uniquely beautiful it is in its partnership between man and animal. We often tend to forget that in this sport, the athlete is the horse. And nothing brings out this aspect more than a very poignant scene early on in the book, when a 5-year-old Imtiaz is being mounted on his favorite horse, Rajesh, by his mother, who herself is a rider. Imtiaz writes, and I quote, "Rajesh seemed almost human in the way he understood me. He was like my alter ego. Mom would hold him and say, 'Look after my son.' And he always did." Welcome to the Filter Coffee Podcast, Imtiaz. How are you doing and where are you talking to us from?
Hi, thanks for having me on the show. I'm actually in a small fishing village called Nargol, which is about 3 hours away from Mumbai.
I read about it a lot. This is where your training center is, isn't it?
Yes, it's called Seahorse Equestrian Training. It's a boutique stable. It's not a production line, but it's where we train horses and riders at all levels. It doesn't really matter. It could be a beginner level or an advanced level.
I know I'm massively jumping the gun as far as the scope of this conversation goes, but is there any particular reason why you chose that small, beautiful fishing village in Gujarat as the place for your...
It was quite interesting. Actually, we had a family home out here. So when we were young, we always had this place, and it's on the beach. It's a beautiful beach, 7-8 miles and it's absolutely secluded. So it's a wonderful training ground as well for horses.
Awesome. Imtiaz, you are the only Indian equestrian Olympian, and we all take great pride in your achievements, and we continue to be inspired by it. And today we're going to talk about your book as well, which I found personally very, very exciting and quite fast-paced for a memoir, and very interesting. It's almost a page turner, isn't it? But I wanted to start by talking to you about your event itself, because I realize that a lot of people who are listening to this show might not know the intricacies or the challenges of the event itself. And in fact, when I did the research for this conversation, I also realized it's considered one of the most dangerous sports per se in the world. Talk to us a bit more about what the event is.
So the event is basically called the 3-Day Event. It actually was a military event. It was started by the military many years ago, and it's comprised of 3 days. So the first day is the dressage day, where and dressage is a sport by itself as well. But here, so the horse has to be extremely well turned out. You have to be extremely well turned out, and it's absolutely to be in harmony with your horse. So you have a set arena, and you have to perform set movements. And you're judged by 3 judges, and sometimes even more 5 judges. And so it's very, very. Every move is looked at. So it's very graceful, and we spend hours and years to get our horse in harmony with ourselves to perform those movements. It doesn't just happen. It takes years for this this partnership to develop. The second day, which is what you were talking about, is the real grit. That's the day, we literally have to change our gear, we change our saddle. Some people change their bridles to get a little bit more, a bit in the horse's mouth. We wear a body protector. So it's like literally going into war. You're getting ready. The horse's legs are all bandaged in case they get hurt. So it's a lot of preparation that goes into this as well. And then we set out to go cross country out on a field that the horse has never seen that course in his life. And we have only walked it. We have never ridden it. So we get to walk it 4 or 5 times, where we look at each jump, we look at the angle, we look at the way we are going to approach the jump, the distance between the one jump to the other jump. There's a lot of undulating terrain. There's lots of ditches, water. So it's very, very technical as well, and you're traveling at a very good speed. So it's quite fast as so it is very dangerous. And most people don't even complete that course, even those who are qualified or those who get to events. And not only because of not being able to, but a lot of other things that play a role, like a horse could get hurt, a horse could get caught in a fence. It could be a small slip. Small on the turn, he could have, taken the turn a bit faster. So there's lots of room for error, unfortunately, in our sport. Having said that, that night, it gets even harder. So if you've completed the cross-country course, then it's all about management for that, to look after that horse, So we ice it. We put the horse's legs in buckets of ice for 20 minutes, all 4 legs. We're doing a massage. They're sometimes doing acupuncture and laser. There's an IV drip going into those horses because they've lost so much fluids to get fluids back into them for the next day, which is show jumping. The next day, so now we're on day 3, we actually had to present to a judge in the morning to see that our horse has not got any cuts, hurts, he's not hurt, he's not lame. So he's absolutely, always the horse comes first in our sport. So once the judges pass that, then we show jump, which is what you see in television, those proper jumps, and you're jumping them in an arena. And if you have a rail down, you get a penalty for it as well. We add up all 3 days' score on that one particular horse, and that's your total score. So it's like a triathlon, actually, So it's like how people have running, swimming, and biking. This, you go to 3 different things. So you have to train in all 3 disciplines separately, just like the triathlon. You cannot be, if you're an extremely good runner, then you have to put more time into the cycling. If you're a very good cycling, you put more time into the running. So it depends what your weakness is and your horses. Sometimes a horse is very good cross country, so we put more time in the dressage. If a horse is very good in dressage, we put more time in the show jumping. So it's that balance of knowing how much to do what on which horse you ride.
This is fascinating, right? The first question that comes to my mind is, what is the connection between the 3, right? Like, because while it's a triathlon, it tests many facets of it.
Right.
Maybe, I don't know if the connection is the marriage between the rider and the horse, because like you also write in your book, the result of your event depends on man and animal, right?
Yes.
You, in fact, go on to imply almost like the horse is the athlete.
Yes.
In your event, isn't it? But what is it that connects the 3 days?
So the real thing that connects them is to say that this is the versatile horse. It's all about the horse. So we're trying to, the sport really came about saying that this is the horse that can be cool, calm, composed, and absolutely elegant on one day. On the second day, it can be fast, fearless, speed, and galloping on the second day, and absolutely, so he's totally versatile. And on the third day, he can come back again and be calm and collect to show jump to keep those fences up. So it's all about the versatility of the horse.
Yes, that's beautiful. In fact, I can't think of any other metaphor in sports for something like this, which is so dependent on 2 different entities. Like, say, for example, Formula One, right? It's yes. as much about the car as it is about the driver.
Exactly.
Right? What is the role of the human in this relationship? I know it goes back probably months, years before the event begins.
Yes.
But on these 3 days, what is the role of you?
So as a rider, our job is to stay calm and relaxed. So, people always get carried, we can't train when we're there. At the event, you've already done the training. It's taken years and years to get your horse fit to this level. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a long program where you go aerobic, anaerobic training. You have to do interval training on their fitness. So we do a lot of gallop sets. So there's a lot that go on there. So for a rider, what goes on to us, it's about really staying in the moment and staying focused, because we have a horse that we with us at competition. So, we can be totally focused, but our horse, we have to stay with our horse as well. So it's about having that combination between the two. And every horse and rider have a different combination. That's what makes it unique, So some it's 60-40, some it's 70-30, some it's 50-50. It really depends upon who you're riding at that time. That you depends upon how much is depending upon you and how much are you depending upon the horse.
It's beautiful. But at this point, Imtiaz, I wanted to start with your personal journey itself. And I think my favorite chapter is also the first chapter in the book, where you talk about growing up as a 4-5-year-old. And there is a section in the book, where you talk about, I think it is something that is carved on the 61st Cavalry Regiment, at the entrance of that regiment in New Delhi, which says, "If paradise exists, it's on horseback that it lies." It just stayed with me after I read it, because it's something I would assume only people who have done this can visualize and imagine. If I say this to a layperson, he might not relate to it. Right?
Yes.
So I wanted to talk about your journey of finding this paradise. And I realized you started as early as 4-year-old. Talk to us about those early years, please.
So, when I was very fortunate, because my mother and my grandfather both used to ride horses. So I was taken to the club at an early age, but they were just hobby riders. They would go for a ride, like you go, sometimes go and play lawn tennis, or you go and play cricket once in a while. So that sort of stuff. So, they would go and ride, but they would ride every day, and I would be taken to the club. So my affinity to horses was at a very young age. And I just had this unbelievable knack to be, I was never scared of them. So I just had this amazing thing that I just loved being next to them. So even from a young age, I would talk to them. I would tell them my worries and things like that. So it was something I always had, even before I rode. So when I started riding, I just thought it was natural. And it's funny you say that, because I was a very timid boy. So I was not a strong, I was not a fighter. I was very quiet. So when I sat on a horse, it gave me that freedom. I felt like, it's like, how people are when they're 18 years old, the first time they drive that car. It gives them that thing that, now I can go wherever I want. Not that they're going anywhere, but they feel that they can go anywhere, It's an amazing feeling as an 18-year-old, that first time when you're driving your car, So for me, I had that feeling at that young age, because I was in total control of this horse, and I could go as far as I wanted, and I had no one telling me what to do or how to do, So that little bit, it made me feel amazing, and at a very young age. My grandfather was a businessman, but he loved all these things in life. He loved horse riding. He was a great photographer. Everything he did to perfection. He loved it. He absolutely loved it. He was a very good ballroom dancer. It's mentioned in the book as well, So it was, he did in those days, which is not even unheard of. So he did those things. So when equestrian something, he wanted to learn to ride, and he was always immaculately dressed. Shoes were always polished. For him, those things mattered more than actually the riding. He loved to wear those, the riding helmet, and he would carry a baton with him wherever he went. So he loved that whole show and show, all those sort of things. And that's how it came down to my mother as well, who was also always immaculately dressed every time she went everywhere. So, I should look up to people like that, So when I was young, I was very fortunate to have those things in my life, where I had these people who did everything to their best, even though they were not competitive or not sporting, but always, when we went to the riding club, the horse was always turned out correctly. So we spent a lot of time as when we were young, riding horses, and I think that's where the real bond developed.
It is very evident that you were really inspired by these two people in your life. And it is also evident that you had this intense love for horses and riding. But passion is one thing, and it is a completely another thing to take it up as a career. At what point in your life did that decision happen, where you knew that this is what you wanted to do with your life?
So, it's quite funny. Again, I'm giving you insights of the book. But, when I was young, I loved sport. And I always wanted to represent India. It was like a big thing, like even on TV, when the Indian flag used to go up, I would be standing there, Savdhan, And I was so excited about it. I said, every day I would tell myself, one day I'm going to represent India. I used to make a podium at home with chairs and, stand on them and things like that to say, I would give victory speeches, And I would remember everybody. I should say, I cannot forget anybody who has made me reach this place, But I didn't even know which sport. So I used to be a good runner. So I thought, okay, I'll do it in running, because Carl Lewis at that time was, had won 5 gold medals. I thought if he can do it, I can definitely do it, Then little did I know I wasn't fast enough, Then I thought I could do it in swimming because I was quite a good swimmer as well. And that also didn't work out. But the horses always stuck with me. And like anything in life, I was very fortunate at a young age. I had a mentor and coach come into my life. So Diana Wilson, who was an English lady whose husband was posted in India, and she had ridden at the highest of levels. So she came to Bombay and I met with her. She became very, very close to my mother. And she felt like my mother saved her because, for an English Brit who lived in the country to come into Mumbai is quite a shock to the system. But we looked after her as if she was family. And in turn, she did the same to me. And she started training me at 11 years old. And every day since then, I said, I want to become like Diana, But she was not only a great rider, but she was extremely well-traveled. She was a historian. She was so intelligent. So I would look up to her all facets. And what's the most amazing part is from 11 to 30 till the Olympic Games, even till today, we are absolutely close. There was never a fallout. There was never a doubt. There was never a question. Whatever she said, I believed it. If she told me to jump in the well, I would have jumped.
So in this journey, you had many, many little adventures, and you write about them eloquently in the book. And these are very, very breezy little episodes, which are very exciting to read. The one that I found most fascinating is actually your time in the Middle East, working with horses of no less than the royal family of Oman. Tell us a little bit about how that happened.
Oh, lots of adventures I've had like this. So it was, an opportunity. My father used to work for a shipping company. And so he used to go to Dubai a lot. And, in his meetings, he met people, being a proud father at that time. He said, oh, my son is one of the, top riders in India. And so through those connections, I got a chance to actually go to Oman and train and ride for the Sultan's brother, because the Sultan himself is all army, so it's the army that ride. So it was a private stable owned by his brother. And it was an amazing experience. And I was really young. I was only 18 years old at that time, So it was my first, job, first time overseas to live alone. But having said that, it was hard as well because the security systems are very, very tough, because I lived in the palace grounds. So, everything was scanned before you went in. You had cameras everywhere. So those sort of things for me, when you're that young, was a bit scary, But I rode some wonderful, wonderful horses. They were all ready-made, beautiful horses that I used to import from England. And we used to compete every weekend, in the UAE. So it was just beautiful and everything was organized. Everything was taken care of. The stables were immaculate. We had chandeliers and, it just was like it was just beautiful. So it was a great eye-opener. And they look after their horses like they love their horses. The one thing that they do, people like to can say whatever they want, but they absolutely love their horses and give them the very, very best, Just to give you a small example also, like in the bedding, when in a stable, we put hay or what we actually put straw so that they have a comfort in bedding. Here, there's a lot of dust due to the straw. So they actually have shredded paper. So there's no dust. I mean, it is 5 times more expensive, but no dust at all in the stable. So it kept the stables cleaner. The stables were all air conditioned. So it was lovely, lovely experience. And I'm really fortunate. But things like this came into my life. Once my mother's very close friend was an ambassador for India in Zimbabwe. So we went to visit. And of course, like me, I go to the local riding club. So I went to the local riding club. I started riding a few horses. And then when the holiday came to an end, the club said, no, please, why don't you stay and continue riding our horses? So my parents left and I just stayed on in Zimbabwe. It was the best experience ever. My parents were so scared. You want to just stay in Africa by yourself. And I was only 18 and I was fearless. I'm like, I'm getting good horses to ride. They love it. They love me. I'm staying. And I stayed back. And it was a wonderful experience.
Right. And I think one of the many big milestones in that journey was, after you took this up, as your calling in life was the Sydney Olympics, isn't it? And it was interesting for me to also read that, you actually started living in Australia by even as early as 97. Of course, the games was in 2000.
Right.
Is that a personal preference or is that what it takes to really get to where you want?
It is what it takes. So you have to be based. Unfortunately, like every other sport in India, you go abroad for training, you go abroad for coaching, and you go abroad for international exposure. In our sport, we have to go abroad even to qualify because in India we don't even have qualifying events close enough. So just to give you an idea, I competed at the Asian Games as well, and Asian Games is the 1 star, and Olympics is 4 star. So there's a 2, there's a 3, and a 4. So it's not like every other sport where, if somebody goes to the Asian Games, the next path is the Commonwealth or the Olympic Games, For us, it is not. That's why we don't have many people from the Asian Games that move on to the Olympic Games, because the steps are way too far. You have to go through many, many levels. So you have to leave your country, you have to leave your family. It's a lot of sacrifices that you make, at a young age, to be away and in an unknown situation like this, That's the call I did. That's what I wanted. And I chose Australia specifically because the Olympic Games are going to be in Australia. So I said, if I'm based in the country that the games are, I don't have to transport a horse. The last 2 gold medals were won by them. So not strategically done, was won by Australia. So I said, what better place to be? This is the place I need to be. I had no idea where I was going to train, what I was going to do, how. I didn't even have a horse. But in my mind, I had already decided that I was already there. I'm already going to be at the Olympic Games 2-3 years before.
Well, that's massive, right? Like, in my mind, to my limited worldview of sports, I'm comparing this to what another athlete would do, right? Like, one of my most favorite biographies in sport is Agassi's Open.
Of course.
And, he speaks about how, he goes there 2-3 weeks before and sort of gets into that state of mind, etc. It seems trivial, almost nothing compared to the investment that someone like you has to do to go to a place 3 years before and start finding, your trainer, start identifying and scouting for your horse, etc. It's a massive investment of a person's life, isn't it? Like 3 years of your life is huge.
Absolutely. That's why I never gave up, because I said, I have no choice. There's no way I'm going to stop at any stage, because my whole life was this, and that's the sacrifice you have to make, and the support I got from my family and friends to do that. They all believed it. Not that they really believed in it. They couldn't believe it themselves, because they said, here's one Indian boy decided that he's going to go to the Olympics in equestrian, just like, like the Jamaicans decided that they want to go bobsledging, in that Cool Runnings movie, it's unheard of, there's no snow in Jamaica. Like here, we don't have that horses, neither do we have those events. But I was so passionate about it. My parents could not take it away from me. They could not at all. They just said, he wants it so bad, he's going to get it, and we did it.
It's an extraordinary dogged following of your dreams, which is extremely, extremely inspiring. And just to close out the story, you would eventually find your horse, which is the Spring Invader in Sydney. And how was, I know you talk about this eloquently in the book, but give us a shorter, small version of what your experience at Sydney was.
It's surreal. There's no way I can even explain it. Even now talking to you, I'm getting goosebumps. First, for me, more than anybody else, it was my childhood dream. I was something when I was 6 years old, I dreamt of this, every single time. And when you're actually at that venue, and it's amazing and every athlete feels that. When you see that Indian flag out there, it's flying because of you. And that is a very special feeling. When you wear that blazer, you can't buy that blazer. You can't buy the Olympic blazer. You cannot, you earn it. It's not given to you, So you feel that little bit of pride, and you feel that you have to do justice to it, because you are representing the country. So even when you're at that podium, I was always remembering I'm representing India. So whatever I do will reflect back. So you have to, that makes it changes the game. It's not like a normal competition where you just go and compete and it doesn't matter, whatever happens, and things go wrong or whatever. Here, dynamics are triple because of that. So it's a fabulous, fabulous feeling to enter that ring, and the crowds, because even most sporting events don't have that type of crowd, especially in our equestrian, in cricket and all, you do get big crowds. But in our type of sports, so gymnastics, fencing, weightlifting, in a normal national competition, we don't get those sort of crowds that you get at the Olympic Games. So it's huge for the horse and for you, because when you enter that arena, 50,000 people, it's huge. And then 1 minute you look at that crowd and then you just stay focused and you're like, this is it, I got to do it. And, you hope for the best.
The relationship that you have with horses seems extraordinarily emotional. I'm reminded of this one line in your book where you say that that horse was a friend, someone I trusted my secrets and my dreams with, end quote. So, when you're speaking of Spring Invader, I was reminded of this line. And I was thinking that if building relationships with your horse is this intense, so must be moving away from them. Are goodbyes any easier with horses?
No, not at all, not at all. It's very, very hard. They become a part of your family. We spend so much time with them. And that's my book also to explain to. And that's why I run my school here. When the kids come here, it's not about a riding lesson, because that's what you get everywhere else. They come to the riding club, they get a lesson, and they go home. You got to spend time with these horses. You got to know what they eat, how much they're drinking. What time they literally go to the loo. To that extent, you got to know. You got to breathe these horses. They've got to be a part of you for you to perform at the best. So, I'll give you an example. Like if a horse goes to a competition and then doesn't eat his food or takes very long to finish his food, you'll be worried. But if that's what his norm is, he usually takes that long, then it's okay. So the only way you're going to know these things if you spend time with them. So it's really like a relationship. The more and more time you spend with them, the more you get to know them.
I was recently speaking to another Olympian, Netra Kumaran, who was actually the first woman to represent this country in the sport of sailing. And she was telling me that, ironically, even though sailing is not a popular sport, India actually is an extraordinarily ideal place for sailing. And, two main reasons for this. One is probably one of the longest coastlines that we have with mostly friendly waters. And B is also the weather conditions where it is possible for someone to sail all year long. And, we were wondering why with all of this, the sport has really not flourished in India. And I have a similar question with you as well. At least, for a layman like me, it seems like we are a country just historically, thanks to our monarchy and then our armed forces, very closely tied with horses. And, if I can speak only for myself, I've never lived in a city or in a place in this country where I'm really, really far away from a stable or access to this animal. Why then has equestrian or horse riding not really taken off as a popular sport in India? Or is it? And do I not know about it?
It is definitely not popular as all the other sports, but people have this thing that, it's a too expensive a sport. One of the big things, which is not really true. Yes, it is a little bit expensive, but I think it's about priorities. People have, it's about the priorities. Today, when you look at schools, people say, well, now that people are spending the money for them to go to good schools or good colleges in education. What this sport does is that it actually teaches the children at a very young age responsibility. In any other sport, it's a racket, it's a football, it's a cricket bat. If the day is not good, it's you can just throw it in your kit bag and you're done. While here, if your day is good or your day is bad, you still have to feed it, you still have to blanket it, you still have to look after it. So it teaches humility at a very, very young age. So I think it's a very powerful sport in that way. The second thing is that there's no stamina and strength involved, So a lot of people who are not very sporty can still ride and be quite good at riding, because it's a lot to do with finesse. It's a lot to do with tact. It's not always about strength and stamina like other sports. Having said that, coming back to your question, I know I went a little bit away. I think it's really important also that we haven't developed a 2-tier and 3-tier cities. Equestrian always started off as an offshoot from racing. So all the racing centers like Mumbai, Calcutta, Chennai, Bangalore, they're the ones who have a riding club close by attached to it. But now it actually has grown into places like Chandigarh, Bhopal, Hyderabad. So all these sort of places are growing now in equestrian, and they have the space to do it. And more kids, schools are taking to it. I've been approached by, now that I've returned, a lot of boarding schools want to put equestrian into the program because it's something that they feel really helps the kids in all aspects of their life.
Right. And do you see the scenario changing today? Because the more you talk, I'm thinking that even if you don't pick it up as a sport, just as a student, as a young boy or a girl, to be exposed to this wonderful animal, to be able to, have that, build that sort of a relationship, I think will keep you in good stead in life itself, isn't it?
Absolutely, because it's discipline. That's the whole idea. You have to get up, whether you're a late night, whether you're tired, you still have to get up at 6 o'clock to feed that horse. And that's what I love to watch these students. My students all get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And, there's no cell phones. They're not on electronics. They're in the barn the whole day. They're washing a horse, grooming a horse, braiding a horse. Of course, there's a lot of riding to be done, but there's a lot of management afterwards. Sometimes the horses are injured. So this, they've got to ice the horse. Sometimes they've got to soak his foot in hot water because he's got a bit of a soreness in his foot. So all these things they learn outside the actual riding a lesson. So even though you're not a top rider, you don't have to be that. It's wonderful for the children to actually be involved in something that they're giving back.
Just talking of that, just correct me if I'm wrong. I always have this feeling that I live in Delhi and I have a lot of friends living in Bombay. I always have this feeling that you're actually much closer and places where you can expose your children to these are probably more approachable and available than you think they are, right? Is that correct today for someone living in a metro city? Is it possible to take their children and expose them to the sport or just horse riding?
Absolutely. Most of the metro cities, but as I said, even the two-tier cities and the other cities, there are riding clubs, there are equestrian centers, there are places where you can get associated to horses. And it's wonderful because you learn so much from that.
Right.
And as I said, just give them that exposure, even if they don't ride. Even at my equestrian center, we have families that come with the children just for an experience. So they spend a couple of hours, and all it is just walking the horses. It's fantastic therapy, fantastic. Bathing them, grooming them, spending time with them. So, and they are huge animals. For these little kids, they're only 6, 7 years old, and you should see them hugging them, going under their legs, going above them, riding them, washing them. So they get, they get so much confidence.
I think that is the word, isn't it? They get so much confidence. And I think your relationship between the man and animal relationship itself sort of changes in your head.
Absolutely.
When you sort of do that, isn't it?
Very true.
Imtiaz, you are the most accomplished equestrian champ from India. And I wanted to ask you this question. At any point, given that, your journey has been so lonely at the top where, like I said earlier, you've been breaking ground in most places. Were there moments where you felt you might not be able to make it at the highest level? And how did you overcome them?
So I think the first major challenge came, as I mentioned in the book, as well as when I was selected for that first Asian Games, 1994. I was only 19 years old, so I was quite young, and I put so much into it, like traveling the whole country alone with my horse. Those days we didn't have cell phones, we had no contacts. Get to a pay phone and make a call to mom just to say I'm alive, literally. You know what I mean? How many parents would know that? And I was traveling in dangerous areas, and at night we were going on highways in those trucks. Anything could have happened. Now when I look back, I don't even know how my parents have allowed it to happen. No parent would allow it to happen.
You're, of course, referring to your training days before the Asian Games. But for the benefit of those who don't know, do you want to set the context on why you went across the countryside on a horseback?
Just the passion. Because I thought that's the only way to do it, to get to the Asian Games. That was my, I had no other choice. If I had a choice, I may have thought about it, but there was no choice. These are the 5 trials. You got to get to them. So I said, I'm going to get to them. I figured out a way. I found out, and all by just, with a lot of friends helping. But, I was really young. So coming back to that first failure, it was really hard. I was totally crushed because I didn't even understand why. There was no reasons given. It was so last minute. And for a young boy, it really, really crushed me. But family, friends, they all supported, and they asked me the question, what is it that you want? And my first answer that came out was, I want to represent India. And my dad sat there and he said, then do it. Don't let these things stop you. If that's your first answer, if my first answer could have been something else, well, I'm not sure, or maybe I should do something else, maybe they would have, changed their path. But it just came out straight thing. I can still remember it. I just said, yeah, that's all I want to do. I want to represent India. I said, then get back and get into the saddle. You know what I mean? That just is just one fall that's happened. So I was very lucky that I had that kind of support, because most other people would have said, now you did it, you gave your best shot, you actually did got selected, now let's move on. This is not for us. So, right. Those are one of the things. Later on in the book, as it says, one of the next really big setbacks where that message came across was at the, in Australia. Actually, the book has more failures than successes. But anyway, it was when I bought my first horse and he broke his leg. That's when I realized that's a sign. That's the universe telling me, get back home, boy. This is a dream which is a bit above your level. And this is a small way to give you a little bit of a hint that this is not for you. I was in a bad situation. I was in a training stable that was very, very hard for me. I was not getting my lessons and I was working long, long hours just to, it was literally a survival thing. Nobody knew that. My parents, I couldn't tell anybody because they would tell me to come back on the next flight. Whenever my parents would call, everything's good, everything's good. How are you sure? Yes, training very hard. I wasn't. Because I was not getting the break at all. And then this thing happened with the horse. So at that time it was very hard for me and then again, somebody else came into my life. So I was lucky, like the MacArthur family, you read the book, it's amazing. This is Beverly MacArthur. She's, she's now a senator as well. She came in and she said, no, I'm just coming to pick you up and we're going to do this together. So, and then I moved into her house and life changed. So if I had given up, I was on the verge to say, listen, this is not for me, I'm going to go home. But she came into it at the right time, right place, and life turned around.
So cutting to present day life, you're not riding anymore, at least professionally, and at least you're not preparing for an Olympics anytime soon. But you seem to be doing more number of things than you did during your Olympic days. You're a commentator with NBC, you're running a training facility, and you're writing a book and so many other things. Having read your book, it's evident from multiple parts of your book that you're someone who values time and discipline a lot, perhaps something that has to do with the way, you grew up as a child and the kind of value system you grew up in. But for the benefit of all of us, how do you conquer time?
Right now, being an athlete and being a 3-day eventer, we don't rest. It's just, we just love what we do. I mean, for me, I don't take a single day off. In fact, if I take a day off, I always say, what am I going to do now? In fact, my wife always keeps insisting, can we have a day off? Can we not, one day, can you not see the horses? Is that, is it a day that you can not walk through the stables? But it's not possible. It's just in me, I love it. I love it. I get up in the morning. Even this morning, I scheduled everything for this meeting. So we started at 5 o'clock. I rode horses. I trained my riders. We had a couple of horses that had to get some medication done. Got it all done. Then and so I'm ready for Filter with Coffee, But it's about juggling time. It's about time management. And that's what these kids need to learn. Even with my kids today, I put on a schedule and I said, the one thing you can't be is late. Okay. If you're supposed to be somewhere at 7 o'clock and you reach there 7 o'clock, you're already late. You know what I mean? So that's the way I think. I'm a very punctual person. It's like we have a very funny thing with my friends. Whenever they have a party at, they invite people in Mumbai at 8:30, they always give me the invitation at 9 o'clock because I'll be there at 8:25. They're never ready. They are waiting out. They say, no, we tell him 9 o'clock because he will come at 8:25 and we're still not ready and he'll be there at 8:30 because in Mumbai, nobody keeps a time. But I've just been used to that. For me, it's not like being, trying to prove a point or something like that. But when somebody tells me a time, I'm there at that time, that's why otherwise I won't be there unless something drastic happens. But I'm very punctual. But I've been taught that, boarding school taught me that, life taught me that if you're late, you'll be always catching up, So this is what I instill with these kids. Even today, I had a lesson with a girl at 7 o'clock sharp. And, at 10 to 7, she was coming to the stable. I said, your lesson is at 7. She said, yes, I've got 10 minutes, sir. I said, no, you'll be late. And she was. So I said, you have to plan accordingly. Move your time schedule before. Make it, how long did it take you to get ready? How long did it take you to put your boots on? How long did it take you to put your tack on? Because you put something, suppose you cannot catch the horse. All these things, like when people say, even in Mumbai, oh, I was late, sir, because of the traffic. There's traffic in Mumbai. When is there not? So plan accordingly, or people say, well, no, it's raining, so that's why we got to be late. It's monsoon. It's going to rain. Think about those things beforehand. These are where we make our mistakes. We always think of everything that, this is last minute. Oh, and if we are 5 minutes late, what happens? I said, no, I will not give you the lesson because you wasted my time. So I'm never late for a lesson. So why should you be late? So, it's really important. Small things like this are life lessons that I learned throughout my career. Diana was strict about those things, the way you dress, the way, even for a riding lesson, shirt tucked in, wear your belt, dress properly, respect your horse as well. You want, turn your horse out correctly, but these people come with their horses. I don't like it when there's, the mane is not brushed properly or the tack is not correct. It's not clean. It just drives me insane.
I think that's what it takes, right? Like to be able to do what you do.
Attention to detail. This is where the difference is. It's the attention to detail. And that's the difference between winning and losing. Everybody has talent. Everybody has worked as hard as you. Let me tell you, everybody's putting the hours in. And there are people 10 times more talented than I was. So I had to be even more hardworking because there are people who've done this all their lives. So you have to then decide if this is what you want to do, how are you going to be better? And this is in life. Anything you do, whether it's business, whether it's being a chef, always try and think of what makes you different. How are you going to be different from everybody else? Otherwise, you'll be an also-ran.
It gets me to a question which is a bit divergent to this discussion. Yeah. But, a dear friend once, his WhatsApp status message really interested me. It says that dependability eats talent for breakfast.
Absolutely.
And it's in a way, it's the spirit of what you're saying is this. And I think this is many sports people or aspiring sports persons would want to know this, right? Like for someone like you who's been there, done that. Does rigor sort of sometimes make up for talent? The rigor, 100%. Attention to detail and all of
100%.
that?
Way over, way over. It's got to be a way of life. One of my trainers and one of the top trainers as well, he said it's got to be like not something that you just do. It's got to be a way of life. It's like Buddhism. You know what I mean? It's you accept it as this is the way I'm going to live my life. Not saying, well, I'm religious and then going to the temple once or going to the mosque. On that when auspicious day or on that auspicious day putting a flower. That's not really religion. It's actually living it. Then those are the people I respect more. So same with the sport. It's got to be your religion. It's got to be something you got to live day in and day out. You cannot say, oh, today I'll ride late, or I'll ride at 10 o'clock, oh, it's too hot, or it's too tired, or I am tired. No. Get it all organized, beforehand. And that is really something I instill. I'm very hard on my students and we laugh a lot, but it's always only when we're training. When we come back, we all eat together, our meals are together, I sit with them and we chat and we laugh and we joke. But because it's important to have the balance as well. They're still kids, you know what I mean? So you've got to have a little bit of fun. We're playing carom or we're playing a board game. It's all fun. But when it comes to the horses or when it comes to life decisions, you've got to have a little bit, I hate to put this word, and as you said, this show is a bit of mongrel in you. You know what I mean? That's what makes the difference. And it's interesting. I had a student now and she's a girl. And that's what I told her. I said, you can be something because you have that little bit of mongrel. You have finesse, but you have that little bit of mongrel, You got to have a little bit of arrogance in you also. You got to be a little bit. So there's some bad things in a way, but you have to manage them because you have to still have that arrogance to go in that ring and say, this is it. Try and catch me if you can, or I'm the best, or I'm going to win today. You got to have that belief rather than going into arena and thinking, well, maybe I hope, I've really practiced really well, so I hope I do well. No, there's no hope. You got to go for it. And if it doesn't work out, so be it. Somebody was better than you that day, suck it up and come back the next day.
Amazing. I wish I had a mentor who could instill these things in me when I was fairly young. But talking of mentors, you spoke about, you mentioned Diana a couple of times in your conversation, and you said how a lot of these values are something that you absorbed from her. And I can already, picturize this person and what kind of a teacher she would have been. But I had a different question, which is, I think for me, any sport is mythology, right? Like you need inspirations, you need those big stories that you can believe in at your toughest times. For you, well, of course, you had your teacher. I'm assuming you pretty much had no precedents in India to sort of learn from, right? Given you were pretty much breaking ground wherever you were going.
Right.
What were your sporting inspirations when you were an aspiring athlete?
Mine was always people like Carl Lewis, Mark Spitz, people who won 5 and 7 gold medals. Because if they won 5 and 7, I thought I could definitely win one. So I was, those were my inspiring. I should watch their training videos. Even today, you look at someone like, I don't know whether you can take names of the show, but like Usain Bolt, you look at their documentaries, they hardly ran. It's all about the physical training that they did, the mental training that they did. They didn't take a day off. Even when he had an injury, how did they overcome those injuries? That's what makes you, as exactly what you said, it's the rigor. It's about not doing what the average Joe does. All your friends want to go out and party. I didn't. All the friends were going out to nightclubs, partying. We live in Mumbai in a very social society. I went to Sydenham College. I went to an affluent school. I was privileged in that way, but I never got caught up into that wrong crowd because sport was so important to me. So I never did things like I never smoked, I never drank, and everybody would say, I was the only odd one out. But it didn't matter because I knew who I was and where I wanted to go, and I knew that none of them are going there, but I'm going to go there.
That's fascinating. In fact, you talk about Sydenham College, and I realized you did a master's in horse management.
Yes.
How does that course work?
It's an amazing course. Actually, it's called Marcus Oldham College, and it was a real starting point for my equestrian career as well. Because I won my first international event being a student at Marcus Oldham on a college leased horse. So it wasn't even a horse that I bought; it was a college gave me a horse. But it's a phenomenal course to study horses, because this is what I mean. In our sport, people, you learn so much about their nutrition, about the physiology, about taking care of them, and running a business as well. So it's all in one.
Amazing. So you have to do the same thing that you do before the event, like find your partner in horses throughout the course, or do you work with a variety of partners?
you have to work with many, many horses, so it just depends on which horse. And a lot of horses only take you to a certain level. And I was, again, very fortunate. I had wonderful horses that did what they were supposed to do. Rajesh did his job. Rajesh could not have taken me to the Asian Games. Rajesh was perfect for when I was at that stage. Arizona came in at that stage. I was just lovely that these lovely horses, Rebellion. I mean, I remember each one. I'll tell you this is how crazy I am. So even when I built the stables, I have named each stable with a brass plow on the horses that mattered to me, because horses come and go, but these stables are their stables. So I've got a Spring Invader, I've got Rajesh, I've got Arizona, I've got Kutubuddin, Rebellion, all the horses throughout my career, and I've had some wonderful horses. So at least every day, every morning, I can see their name and remember them for what they did for me.
Bringing this back to Olympics, I believe we have one contender in equestrian, which is Fawad Mirza.
Yeah.
Is there someone who you know? What do you think are his chances?
So I know him, and I know his father extremely well. He's a vet as well, so he comes from a horsey background. He's a wonderful boy. He's very hardworking, very dedicated. He's got great horses, and I really wish him all the best. Coming back to how he's going to do, it always depends upon the course. So we don't know the course. I have not seen it, neither has he. So only when he gets to Tokyo and the course is actually open for riders, that's when we really realize is how competitive, and then he'll know about his horse, because it could be a technical course. It could be a very big course sometimes, undulating. What sort of terrain are we looking at? We have no idea what Tokyo's got out for us. That's what makes our sport so special, because it's absolutely closed to everybody. Nobody has seen that course. So the first time people will see it is when Fawad sees it, when the course is open.
So, one thing I couldn't really manage in my research before the conversation is, like, you take tennis, there is an ATP ranking. You take ICC, there is an ICC ranking.
Right.
In this sport, if everything sort of depends on so many variables,
right?
Are there like world number ones, world number twos, and how is it decided?
We do have a ranking as well. They're called FEI, which is Federation Equestrian International, and it's an FEI ranking 1, rank 2 in each discipline. So we have FEI ranking in dressage, eventing, and show jumping. But just between you and me, I don't put too much weightage on that, because it's about how many events you can get to, how many competitions you can get to, and with horses, it's expensive. So you can have a really top rider with a top horse and just have one horse and not be ranked. Because, if you win an event and I have 5 horses and I've come 3rd and 2nd and 4th in many events, I will have a ranking higher than yours.
So and are these rankings for the rider or for the rider and the horse combination?
So it's a rider ranking. That's why. So when riders have more horses, they get a better ranking. So it's a bit of an odd situation. So you don't really follow ranking as much in equestrian. You really look at the pair at that moment that is hot and that's doing well, the rider and that horse, And that's the way I look at it as well.
That's fascinating. That also makes it much more interesting than other sports, where there is a sense of eventuality, isn't it? Imtiaz, we usually end the episode by asking our guest what he or she is watching these days, or reading, or listening to. Can you give us a few recommendations, maybe even on equestrian, but even otherwise? What are you watching, listening to, reading these days?
Oh, I'm terrible. I'll have to do research for this for the next and send it back to you, because I'm not a very good, I don't watch much TV at all. In fact, my wife, she always, and she loves watching television. So she's, come on, let's watch these. Let's watch a show together. So we watched the Pablo Escobar. Can you imagine how bad I am? I watched it now,
Narcos.
So Narcos. So you can imagine, and I loved it. Absolutely. I'm like, oh my God, look what I was missing out in my whole life. I've never watched Narcos, So I love that kind of movie. In fact, I'm for him, because I love the loyalty. That for me was everything. Even though he was a terrible person afterwards and he did so many wrong things, but I felt that his people let him down. So it was a bit odd story. I look at things in a very odd way. They're like, look at him, he's a criminal. I said, yeah, but when they shake hands, it's everything. That's what, and I hate all this writing down agreements and things like that. I think it's all old fashioned. When I give my word to somebody, I will stick by my word. And that's what he was, whatever he was, his, all those other people that were there, they stuck by each other, and then they're the ones who duped him in, so that's what I felt bad about.
That's a very interesting perspective. Never have I heard on Narcos.
I just feel it's loyalty, even though it's bad, but, you stick with what it is, and in the book it mentioned, because in the Lawrence School Sanaa, when I was in boarding school, that's what it was, what our friendship was all about. When you got into trouble, nobody said, well, it was him. We all stuck together and we took the beating together, we took the ragging together. But we never opened our mouths, because that's what it takes.
Brilliant. That's the value. That's a value system. Let me change the question slightly to Two things actually. One is if someone needs to understand the sport, or this way of living, so to say, what can he or she watch or read? This is one question. I'll let you answer it and then move to my next one.
Okay, it's a hard one. I think if they really love the sport.
It's your book, of course, which is the biggest source I know as of today.
Exactly. That's it. Read my book. Read. Riding free. Buy 10 copies. But no, I think it's unfortunately in our equestrian, and in fact I use the words in today's lesson as well. You can't learn riding through a book. You can learn the management, you can learn how to look after a horse, and there are many, many books. But actual riding, you need the experience. You need hours in the saddle. So it's just like driving a car. When the first kid drives a car, you have to allow the child to drive, because that's the only way it's going to experience. But every time there's traffic, no, I'll drive. So the child never gets experience. You have to put them behind the wheel in a controlled environment and get the experience. So the same thing I would tell with parents today or children today is get the experience hands-on. Find a riding school, find a riding club close to you. And it doesn't matter whether you ride or you don't ride, just get close to the animal first. Once your comfort zone improves, the riding will come. It's an amazing connection that these kids have. I have kids who just hug and love and spend hours in those stables just with their horses. So it's just like having a dog, but a bigger dog.
Beautiful. Excellent. Now, I can't end the episode without asking an absolutely silly question.
No.
Do you have a favorite horse movie?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I love it. It's a very old movie, though, because I'm a little bit old timer. It's called Far Lap. So it's actually an Australian movie. So there's, how in the new movies are Secretariat and Seabiscuit, which are excellent horse movies. I love them. But Far Lap is really a little older movie. So an Australian movie about an Australian horse and a wonder horse that won the Melbourne Cup as well. And it's a wonderful one. It's very hard to get a copy of. So you have to Google it and find it because it's not on the normal platforms of Netflix and Amazon. But I absolutely love that movie because it's just true horsemanship and a wonderful horse. But there are lots of others like Seabiscuit as well as and Secretariat, which are lovely horse movies, which every kid should watch. Every kid should watch.
Beautiful. Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, Imtiaz, and can't wait for everyone to read this book so I can discuss it with my friend.
No, thank you so much. And I'm so happy that you have read it and you're still talking to me. That's a good sign. I was scared that maybe after reading the book, you'd say, well, cancel the show. Let's get somebody else on.
Thank you.
No, thank you again. Thank you so much for having me.
If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcasts.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to reach out to me, I am _Karthik. That's Karthik with an H on Twitter. And filter_coffee. That's coffee with a K on Instagram.
I hope you enjoyed that show. Let me tell you a little bit about what happened on the IVM Podcast Network this week. On Cyrus Says, Cyrus was joined by Irfan Pabani, who is an old friend of his. They talk about the rich flavors of Indian food and Parsi food specifically. He was also joined by author and historian William Dalrymple. They discuss literature, history, and the culture of the Indian subcontinent. And let me give you a few quick things to check out. Chuck, aka Deepak Gopal Krishnan of Simplified and the Origin of Things fame, has Rohan Joshi, formerly of AIB, on his show. Also on this round is on me. Gautam Purohit of Thakur's Bhojnalaya was on. On the note, Maruk Inayat talks about the cabinet reshuffle. And do check out Global Victoria Tech Talks. We talk about the booming gaming and edutech industries in Australia. Do follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram to keep up what's going on the network. And I'd like to finally thank our sponsors on the network this week, Cred, Ciet, and Global Victoria. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Whether you're an established sports person or a budding one, or simply a sports enthusiast, join us, Tanvi and Shlok.
We are two passionate pro badminton players talking policy, mindset and everything sport.
So tune in to The Millennial Athlete every Monday.
Only on the IVM Podcast Network.
Trust us, it's gonna be lit.